Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 296. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss Young Woman and the Sea. It's a very timely film. We just wrapped up the 2024 Paris Olympics. The 1924 Paris Olympics are a big piece of this film, so just unbelievable. It can't be by coincidence that they chose this year to release this film.
Well, yes and no, because this was in development for quite a while. Jerry Bruckheimer was given the book. It's actually based off a book and obviously based off of a true story.
Yeah.
And he was so interested in Trudy Ederle, he really wanted to bring this to the big screen. And Daisy Ridley had a big hand in getting it produced as well. She has executive producer credit on it. So they worked on it for quite a while. But by the time they actually got it filmed, got it edited, the timing was just perfect. But what I was so surprised about was that until we sat down to watch it, I had heard nothing of this incredible woman. I had no idea who she was. I had no idea about her story.
Yeah.
And she's just such an important part of history. I can't believe that she was just overlooked, essentially. And that's a big part of the reason that they wanted to produce it. They wanted to bring it with Disney. And, you know, I just love that it's a Jerry Bruckheimer production because, you know, he's really known for these larger than life movies like the Armageddons, the Bad Boys, the Pirates, the National Treasure, right? But I love his human interest stories more than anything. Like Remember the Titans is just an incredible film. And this is, spoiler alert, joining the ranks.
Yes, well, where does it rank for both of us amongst Disney sport films? And do we think that this was the story worth telling? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections. Walt is so excited, he hopes you'll visit.
New York City, 1914, a young Trudy Ederle is in bed with the measles while a ferry burns. When asked why so many women, specifically women, died on the barge, her mother tells her that it's because they could not swim. Doctors then fear that Trudy's condition is mortal. Very grave condition that she's in. So her mother, Gertrude, decides that Trudy's siblings, Meg and Henry Jr., will learn to swim. Trudy makes a miraculous recovery and wants to learn to swim, but her reluctant father, Henry, forbids it and tells her to find a new hobby. She learns how to play the ukulele and plays the same song over and over until her father relents and lets her learn to swim. As they enter their 20s, Gertrude has the girls join the Women's Swimming Association, coached by Charlotte Epstein. Meg thrives as Trudy initially struggles. However, her determination and hard work eventually pays off, despite knowing that being in the water could lead to her going completely deaf. Trudy begins to exceed all expectations, winning multiple races and setting world records, while Meg begins to struggle with focusing on swimming and balancing her love life, although her father would prefer an arranged marriage. The American Olympic Union approaches Trudy about joining the Olympic team to go to Paris in 1924, but not Meg. Jabez Wolf, their coach, is less interested in the girls' training and more concerned with keeping them separated from the male athletes on their voyage over to Paris. Severely undertrained, the women come back from the gold medal, from the Olympics mostly empty-handed. Trudy returns home with a bronze medal, and she learns that Meg has agreed to an arranged marriage that she did not want. By chance, Trudy meets Bill Burgess, an Englishman who swam the English Channel, and it reinvigorates her desire to swim. Despite pushback, especially from her father, Trudy decides to swim the English Channel. She asks the American Olympic Union's James Sullivan for sponsorship, which he rejects as he has concerns for her safety. He mentions heading to New Jersey for dinner with his mother, and Trudy offers to swim to the restaurant. He says if she makes the 7-mile swim in 3 hours, he would sponsor her. She completes the swim in 2 hours 56 minutes, so he agrees to ante up and offer the sponsorship. When she tells her mother of the event, her mother tells her that her twin sister, meaning her mother's twin sister, this is Trudy's aunt, died from drowning. Sullivan tells her that Wolf, not Epstein, will coach her through the swim. In France, she trains and befriends Benji, another swimmer trying to cross the channel. After Benji nearly died during his swim, Trudy gives it a try and at first is doing well, which infuriates Wolf as she will not listen to his instructions. Wolf spikes Trudy's tea with seasickness pills and disorientates her during her swim, bringing this attempt to an abrupt end at just under 7 miles. As she recovers, Meg and Henry arrive to bring her back to the United States. However, Bill Burgess arrives and deduces what Wolf had done and offers to coach her moving forward. Trudy secretly escapes her initial trip home to stay back and try the swim again. Sullivan sees that she has left and notifies the press, who arrive to see her off. Meg, Henry, and Burgess follow by boat. They are now kind of guiding her through the channel. Trudy faces challenges such as an aggressive press and painful jellyfish stings, as well as leaking goggles as her father begs her to be pulled from the water, begs her to stop. Meg repairs the goggles and Trudy continues her swim. As darkness approaches, Trudy decides that she must finish the swim alone, as she is now within 6 miles of England, crossing the Goodwin Sands. Trudy, however, becomes lost in the shallows as she has now lost her sense of direction. People in Dover begin to light bonfires, which Trudy uses to guide her to shore. News of her triumph brings a sense of pride, and upon returning to New York is given a ticker tape parade. Her journey lasted 14 hours and 31 minutes. Trudy would eventually lose her hearing and dedicated her life to teaching deaf children how to swim before passing away in 2003 at the age of 98 years old.
What a life.
Yeah, what a life lived. Off the rip, I think the pacing for this film is incredible.
Yeah.
The movie does have a runtime. It's about an hour and 48 minutes, I think, is the official runtime. Thereabouts. You could have easily stretched this to a 2-hour film. No one would have been concerned about it. No one would have judged it. Biopics especially tend to be a little bit longer as you're really painting the story. But I don't mind that they jumped from her measles into her 20s fairly quickly.
Well,
I mean, a lot happens, but they don't really spend a lot of time in her childhood, is my point.
I'm going to disagree with you because I actually have a lot of notes on the setup here because I think that it's really important. You're right. It moves pretty quickly, but they're laying so much groundwork just as far as the script goes. So they're starting us off in 1914 when she has the measles, which is when the ship goes on fire and she's completely traumatized by it. So this is 10 years prior to her going to the Olympics for the first time. This is a harsh reality, but it's such a great setup that Trudy just can't wrap her mind around the fact that people would rather burn than drown. And she's like, that's not going to be me. I'm going to learn how to swim, especially because she gets a new lease on life after she beats the measles. This is my one point of contention, though. The doctor basically gives her sentence. Was nobody going to say goodbye to her?
It was a different time.
It was.
I mean, these people photographed their dead. This was a very different time.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. And I guess, to your point, the pacing is so good. Maybe they didn't want to drag it down with a very long, teary goodbye, especially because she's going to make it through. And they do a really good job of keeping that tension because the doctor says there's nothing more I can do for her. The next time I come downstairs, she's going to be gone. So they hear, the family's just waiting. The clock is ticking. And at that point, it's just awful. But like, knowing that it's going to happen, you just want to be on the other side of it so you can start to like process your grief. So, they hear the plodding down the stairs and it's Trudy and she's feeling great and she's hungry. And it's just that sigh of relief. It's such a beautiful moment. And from there, Trudy is just completely determined to learn how to swim. Meg is swimming. Swimming is such a big thing. They're at Coney Island. Nathan's is giving out free hot dogs if you can swim around the pier. And her sister tells her, like, don't worry about it. I'll just buy you a hot dog. And Trudy wants to earn her hot dog. She wants to learn how to swim. She wants to go around the pier. And by the time she finally does, she's on like her fourth or fifth hot dog that she has earned from swimming. So I just love the gumption that they're setting up from the beginning. And I also really love how where their father is saying no the whole time, their mother is being very quietly supportive off the rip. She's obviously supporting Meg swimming, but I think she's more of the mentality, especially knowing later on that she lost a sister, being that Trudy was spared, she wants her daughter to have a full life. So when the father's saying that he's not going to pay for swimming lessons, she doesn't even cook him dinner. She's like, I'm not hungry. And then she goes to work making like these cloth flowers that she can sell to pay for the swimming tuition.
Yeah, which was $2 a week.
Yeah.
But, the father made a point though, right? He's from the old country. They're German, if I remember, right? So they're from the old country and he goes, swimming is free. Why are we going to pay for them to swim? Because to him, you just go to the beach, you go swim, you don't pay for it. It's just what you do.
I'm glad that you bring that up too, because I feel like most of the films that we see from this era, granted this was before the Depression, but you always see the families in New York City that have immigrated here living in poverty. I like that we're seeing a pretty successful family.
Yes.
They can afford the swimming. It's just that the father is choosing not to. They have, for the time, it was a beautiful home. They're in a good area. We do see them doing like leisure activities, like going to Coney Island, like going to the movies. And I feel like so many other films set in this era,
yes,
you don't often see that. I mean, Titanic, obviously that happened 2 years earlier, but there was such a divide between the rich and the poor.
Right.
You don't really get to see these middle class families like the Ederles in this era.
Right. You think about like Newsies. Not the same thing.
Perfect example.
The Greatest Game Ever Played. Not the same thing. Even some of the more modern day sports films that Disney did, like Cool Runnings. Obviously, they were coming from Jamaica. They really had to scratch as much money as they could just to get to the Olympics. So here, you're right, affluential family, successful business. They own that butcher shop, right? It's certainly it's a departure, but I'm glad that Disney has a tendency to do this. They will change stories in biopics to make a better movie. You could argue that this movie would have been a quote-unquote better movie and a better story if the parents had the business and the father was making just enough to get by and mother had to go make these flowers for her daughter. It's an empowerment thing. It's a this, it's a that. I am so glad that they didn't. I am so glad that they stayed true. From what I gather, from the research I did do, this is fairly close, very close actually, to how life really was for them.
There are two areas according to my research, where they did embellish the truth a little bit. One of them is not an embellishment. It's just actually a glaring error. Trudy singing Ain't We Got Fun becomes a thread throughout the film. I actually love it as the form of torture to get her father to cave on swimming.
Right.
You know, this was the early day. This is the song that doesn't end. And she just keeps singing the same verse over and over until she breaks him. And that's become like her little motivation. So it works when she's older singing it to motivate herself, because the song came out in 1920. When she's a child, it's not yet released. So, I mean, maybe you make the argument they're living in New York. She's heard it on a local level before it was published, but I can't believe that the director, that Jerry Bruckheimer is going to go, no, we're going to look the other way on this one, because I doubt that they didn't know that they were skewing the timeline as far as when this song came out.
I'm willing to overlook that. That is, they're obviously doing it for laughs, and you're right, it becomes this through point through the whole movie. That is not nearly as egregious as, like, Remember the Titans, where that entire movie is completely almost, I can't say the entire movie. Most of that movie is false. Most of that movie is completely embellished. I'm willing to overlook this.
But you're talking about 1914. Every song from that year is in public domain right now. It's not like, you know, you had a limited list to pick from for songs that you didn't want to pay for.
Jerry Bruckheimer, if I remember correctly, produced a film where Ben Affleck and Bruce Willis fly 2 rockets to a meteorite and drill it. Okay, like let's give Jerry Bruckheimer a little bit of grace here.
Yeah, because it was easier to teach the
drill team to be astronauts
than it was to teach the astronauts how to drill.
How to drill a hole and drop a bomb in it.
Insulting everything that NASA has ever done.
Okay, so I'm willing to give him a little bit of grace overlooking that, because at the end of the day, this is a form of entertainment. But I digress.
Let's
get back.
Yeah.
I do like the whole ukulele thing, though. I think it's funny.
Yeah, it was very funny. Another great beat of comedy. I love this introduction to Epi, because she's very supportive of Meg swimming, but, you know, she basically auditions the girls, and Meg can swim, and Trudy, this is where I have a little bit of a disconnect, because Trudy is swimming around the pier in Brooklyn. There's a strong current and she can handle that. But in the pool, she's dog paddling. And, you know, they do make a point of saying that because she had the measles, she's not allowed in any of the public pools. So she's never been in one before. But to me, if you can handle the ocean, you should not be looking like a fish out of water.
No, I'm going to push back on that one slightly, because she's self-taught. It's you see people that play sports all of the time that naturally have it, but their technique is wrong. You see it a lot with people that teach themselves how to golf. You see it with people who play hockey. Maybe they can stick handle, but they can't skate worth a damn. You have somebody that can hit a golf ball, but their technique is completely wrong, and it leads to inconsistencies. I'm going to buy the fact that she's going to doggy paddle around a pier where she's teaching herself how to do it. Going into the pool, you're right, she shouldn't necessarily struggle. She should be a strong-ish swimmer, but if she has no technique, swimming around a pier is very different from staying in a lane in a pool. That's fair.
And if you are doggy paddling, you've not yet built that upper body strength where you'd be swimming laps around these girls out of the gate. But I love, this introduction with Epi, the sort of the way that she levels with Gertrude, because she's like, it's going to be $2 a week. Is that going to be a problem? We know that it's not, because Gertrude is the one funding their swimming lessons. But there's sort of this unspoken agreement between her and Epi that they're doing this behind their father's back.
Yeah.
Because Epi gives this great line about how the lioness is the one who hunts and the queen bee is the one who runs the hive. And, it's also setting up the fact that Epi really believes, no matter what society is saying, that women can compete. And then to circle back to what we were talking about as far as building up upper body strength, you have this boiler bet. Epi she's still not supporting Trudy swimming, so she has her feeding the boiler at the pool. And she basically tells Trudy, like, why are you still here? Everybody's bullying you. You should just sort of bow out gracefully. And Trudy's like, you don't even let me swim. So she gives her a shot. And now it's the last person to finish is the one to feed the boiler. So this is also where I sort of question, like, okay, maybe she doesn't have the technique at this point, but she's been feeding the boiler for a couple of weeks. She should have that upper body strength. She should have started beating these girls right away. And it still takes her a couple of races to really get the hang of it. And then, now Epi starts punishing the other girls with feeding the boiler because they're not keeping up with Trudy.
I love the whole feed the boiler thing. I love the symbolism of it. I love the fact that Epi at the end of the day knows that it is a strength building exercise, and that ultimately it's going to not only motivate them, but it also is going to physically get them where they need to be so that they can compete at the highest level. I love the whole thing personally.
I believe that she was hazing Trudy from the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
To see how much she was willing to put up with and how determined she really was.
Correct. And when you get to the first competition where they go up against the Australians that had swam in the Olympics, Trudy gets picked because she's become one of the stronger swimmers in the association. And even then, when she goes, what should I do, coach? She says, just stay out of their way. So even then, she's still kind of hazing her, but I actually think she meant what she said. I don't think that was like I'm going to say something to rile you up to get the best out of you. I think at that point, she still wasn't completely convinced.
Right. And as if that's not enough, they set up that race with, don't worry, ladies, you're in the boys' pool, but medics are standing by. Like, dude, how you think they got there? Come on now. It just, I get it. It's reinforcing how these women were viewed at the time. But this is where the film also does start to take a little liberty. Like, yes, you do have to set everything up that Trudy did beat the odds, but women were competing in the Olympics for swimming at this point. They made it seem like Paris was the first year that they were allowed in. I think it was the first time that women had a breaststroke competition, but they were swimming at a competitive level, even at this point.
Well, outside of this, though, you get her winning her race, shocking everybody, and it leads into what? A good old-fashioned montage. That's a pretty good montage, too. I think it does a good job of setting up just how quickly she sort of did take that sport by storm, the way that she was setting records. And her father was still not, completely impressed by any of it. You could tell that there was still... I don't think it was so much a criticism. I think at the end of the day, his concern was always her safety. I think he knew she was going to go deaf. I think that more than anything else, like when you have the Olympic Committee is saying, don't worry, folks, these birds will be fine. Obviously, you're being playfully misogynistic, right? You're playing it for cringe laughs because that's how people spoke, but you're doing it to offend people by having people chuckle and roll their eyes over how ridiculous it is. When her father gets like this, though, I don't get the same feeling. I don't think this was you're a woman, you can't do it. You're a girl, you shouldn't be doing it. That's not how that plays off at all.
Yeah, I don't think that that's coming from a place of malintent. I agree with you. He's just scared for her at this point. So he tries for one last Hail Mary to set her up with someone. And what I really like here is how it strengthens her relationship with Meg, the person that got her into swimming. Meg is an amazing wing woman. She fakes a fall to ruin Trudy's walk with the guy that her father picked out, who can barely speak a word of English other than the nuts that he's selling. Yeah, it's a really good, really funny moment. But Meg totally falls on the sword for her and, you know, throws herself off the pier so that Trudy has to rescue her, just so that Trudy can get out of this one. And from there, Meg gets shut out of the Olympics. And that's a tough pill to swallow, being that she's the one who got Trudy into swimming. But at this point, she's still trying to find her own happiness because she's been sort of flirting with this guy that's been in the stands, and she's not ready. You know, she wouldn't let her sister enter an arranged marriage, and she's certainly not ready to do it for herself yet either.
Yeah, I only wonder if the one but not the other thing was a little cliche. Like, did they play that up for drama? Because they made it seem like, well, we only have one more. I mean, that's how the Olympics work. You have one more spot. But you would take the best competitors. And it almost seems like, well, we can only take one sister.
Right.
So I can't. So it's. I don't know if they're embellishing that she wasn't good enough to make the Olympic team, or if they just wrote it as, well, it's only going to be one of them that gets picked.
Well, here's what they did embellish. We get to Paris. We see on the ride over that they're not really allowed to train. And, you know, it's all under the guise of, we have to keep you separate from the men. You can't be out there. But they've also got the women in such poor conditions because they're boarding next to the engine room, so they can't sleep at night. So they've got all of the cards stacked against them going into the Paris Olympics. But this is where I think they wrote all of these problems in, because in the actual Olympics, they did place gold. They don't even mention that in this story. We see Trudy win a bronze medal, and that completely gets glossed over even in the film. So they completely downplayed how well the women's swim team actually performed.
But was she a part of that gold medal team? It may not have been her competition. So if it's a biopic about her and all she did was win bronze, I say it like it's no big deal. Of course it is. But them winning gold, if she didn't win gold, it doesn't matter for the purposes of this film.
Well, you're right. And the reality is they did get to come home and take part in a parade. So you would have had to downplay that for the film if they had won gold, because then you'd have to show it. But be that as it may, for the purposes of this story, they still gloss over Trudy winning a bronze and what an accomplishment that was, because she gets home and it's like, oh, by the way, Meg is engaged, and that's the big news. I don't think it's a surprise that Trudy left and this happened, but it is a hard pill to swallow, because now Meg does accept, okay, I didn't get to go to the Olympics. I'm going to follow the path that my parents are laying out for me.
Well, it almost seems like Trudy or Meg didn't miss out much on not being in the Olympics for all of the reasons that you mentioned. Hey, you know what? She wouldn't have missed out on being in the 2024 Olympics either, because everybody got to sleep on cardboard boxes in Paris with an oscillating fan.
Ouch.
Yeah. If you think I'm just saying, if you think Paris conditions were rough in 2024, just wait till you get to LA in 2028. I think you're going to see a lot of these professional athletes are going to start booking hotels ahead of time so that they get the accommodations they wanted. Team USA basketball dropped like $30 million, some ridiculous number, to get better hotels, better food. It's crazy. I mean, yes, for the purposes of the film and showing that the conditions were deplorable for the female athletes going over, yes, it absolutely works. But it's crazy 100 years later that they're still treating the athletes like secondary citizens. Go carry the flag, but we're not going to treat you that great. It's crazy to me.
Especially when there was such an elaborate opening ceremony. It's not like you don't have the funds. And what's wild to me is that we've not even come that far since Sochi. That was a debacle. And that should have changed the game for everyone.
Well, you would think that the host cities, when they get these games, when they set up the Olympic Village, there were certain criteria they should have to meet. You know, like not making them sleep on cardboard boxes, but be that as it may. The whole thing in the film just seems like a stunt. It seems like they brought them over to Paris, not even because they wanted them to succeed or believed that they could. It kind of seems like they brought them just to say that they did. So I don't know if that's how they viewed it, or if that was another embellishment, or if it wasn't written all that well, but it seems like they were just doing they were doing something opportunistic and just being like, okay, we brought him, it's done.
I do feel like it was embellished because they make a mockery of these women when they come back. So I feel like that was a little bit done up in the writing.
Let's talk about when they come back, though, because you mentioned it before. They come back, Meg's engaged. Did Meg give it all up for Trudy? This is a question that doesn't really get answered because I don't think it necessarily needs to. It's a question I've asked myself in both viewings of this film, and I keep coming back to the answer being yes. I feel like Meg gave up what she really wanted, partook in this arranged marriage that she didn't want, strictly so that it would take the heat off of Trudy for going to the Olympics as an athlete.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even considered that.
I think she just did it to appease her father.
I think that she's just more resigned to her place in life, because when they're kids, they make that promise to each other. Or no. I'm sorry. It's not when they're kids. It's a little bit later on when they first bring up the concept of arranged marriage. And they do talk about it for Meg first. And she wants no part of it. And she promises Trudy, we're always going to be together. And I think that once Trudy gets picked for the Olympics and Meg doesn't, she realizes that that's not going to happen and that Trudy's on a completely different path than she is. And I think that this is just part of her, you know, sort of shriveling up and taking it, which is a surprise because she's been fighting so hard up into this point. And you would think that Trudy going would be even more of an inspiration to push her forward to not just accept this, but she basically like disowns herself from her family at this point.
Yeah.
Or she did before she accepted the marriage.
Correct. So now the two of them sort of go their separate ways, right? In a roundabout sort of way. Because now the focus of the film shifts to what is life like for Trudy after the Olympics? She wins a bronze medal. It's not good enough. She was supposed to be the star athlete, was going to win all this gold, couldn't do it. And you get this really great moment with this kid that says, I want to be like you when I grow up, when she's working at her father's shop. She has this chance meeting with Bill Burgess. Another great introduction to a character, by the way, because we've only seen him in newsreels.
Right.
But when he comes on shore and he's completely naked and gets tackled by the police, it's hysterical.
Yeah, it's great. This is, again, where this film is so well paced and so well balanced, because Trudy and Meg are going through a tough time, but they have this moment of levity with the comedy here.
And I think you needed it. I think you needed to have some lightheartedness. I think that was the right time to do it. I think kind of introducing him as this eccentric adventurer was the right move to make. And I think that it did a good job of calling back to a scene where Meg and Trudy are in a movie theater. They see the newsreel for the first time. You can see that Trudy's interest is starting to peak, but she's completely done with swimming at this point after her quote-unquote embarrassment at the Olympics. I like that they use this as an opportunity to reignite the spark, and how she doesn't, and she says, I am not asking for permission. She goes to dinner that night and just says in front of her family, I'm swimming the English Channel. That's it.
And now you do get the supporting cast start to rally around her. You have Epi go to bat. with Sullivan. She throws the failure of the Olympics back in his face by saying, you know, you kept the women in such poor conditions they couldn't compete. And now she fully supports Trudy's new goal, as does her mother, which we're going to learn after Trudy swims from Brooklyn to New Jersey. I love this scene. I love that Sullivan gets his comeuppance. I love that Epi puts all of her faith in Trudy and gives her a crash course of, okay, it's dark. You got to watch out for ships. Keep the lighthouse over your shoulder. That's how you're going to get there. When Sullivan has put this insane time crunch on her, because at the time, I think the record was 5 hours. And he's like, if you do it in 3, I'll sponsor your swim of the English Channel.
Yeah, I think that the way that you see it, where he's walking out to the valet, he goes to get in his car, and she's waiting for him in the back seat and says, "How was dinner, Mr. Sullivan?" This whole thing is awesome.
Yeah, I really, really love this scene. And again, balanced out. She gets home, her mom's like, "Where are you?" And this is where we learn about her mother's sister. And I love that they held it on the audience for so long. And you know, the reveal to Trudy as well that her mother has been the one quietly pulling strings to support her career this entire time, even though she's terrified for her.
I don't like that they held this.
Really?
Because it doesn't seem realistic. In a biopic, there needs to be realism. I would find it impossible to believe that her mother would have held this secret from her for this long. I buy the fact that this is why she wanted her children to learn to swim, but that should be independent of the ferry burning. I feel like it's either one or the other. If it's both, we should have known this from the beginning. I understand you're going to play with the timeline to keep us entertained, but the story in and of itself is entertaining enough. When they stuck this in here, I went, I know why you did that. It feels like a movie. I shouldn't feel like that's a movie move, and it felt like a movie move.
But at the same time, they've been swimming in pool. And I'm not just talking about Trudy. I'm talking about Meg as well. As far as Gertrude being scared for her children, you know, she was obviously very scared when Trudy had the measles and she thought she was going to lose her. But both of them have been swimming in pools. Both of them have been swimming in daylight at Coney Island. Now, this is the first time that Trudy has done something really daring like this. So you're right. I think it is written for the drama, but I do think that it works and it doesn't feel forced because now she realizes that Trudy has a license to do anything. Trudy has realized this for herself, and she's probably, you know, there's a difference between going to compete in the Olympics where you're in a controlled environment in that pool, and now she knows that Trudy has just swam open water and there's nothing that she can do to stop her.
What I want to know is why Sullivan has such a connection and an affinity for Wolf. Because when he offers to sponsor her, he says Wolf needs to train her. This is the same Wolf that did not properly have those girls ready to go for the Olympics. This is the same Wolf that had failed at swimming the English Channel himself. Now, I understand based on the time period, he wasn't going to let Epi do it per se, but I don't know why. I don't know why it needed to be Wolf.
I think it's a couple of things. I think it's number one, the misogyny. I think that, you know, he was totally willing to shoot Trudy down and, you know, completely dismiss her goal. He's already been proven wrong by Trudy by her making it to Jersey, so he's embarrassed. He's certainly not going to have 2 women show him up at this point. And you also wonder, because you know that Wolf was trying to sabotage her, if that's all part of the game. If he's really the big bad and Wolf is the muscle as far as this sabotage. It might have been his idea.
But it makes the Olympic Committee look bad. The American Olympic Union is going to put money behind this They've already been embarrassed, quote unquote, because Trudy couldn't win a gold medal. So why are they going to hang her out to dry again and make themselves look ridiculous?
Fair. Well, then it's all ego.
But let's talk about when she gets over to France again.
This coast of Grenay is so beautiful. And I love how, Trudy's finally there. She's going to do this. And when you get this great juxtaposition that she gets to the hotel and they're having a celebration of life for somebody who didn't make it.
It's perfect. I love that. I love the introduction to Benji. Me too. I love that she can just grab a beer and drink it with the boys and prove herself. That's a big deal when you think about what was going on at that time, right? So I think that it does a really good job of turning who we think is going to be an adversary into an ally. This movie does do a good job of keeping you guessing as to who to trust and who to not.
Right. And it didn't occur to me until the second time that we had watched it, how Wolf is trying to fail her from the start, because he's feeding her grapes and it's under the guise of, well, you need to watch your girlish figure if you're going to do this and you're going to be in the press and all that. And obviously that's very typical of the time period. And everybody was women especially, there was immense pressure on what your physique looked like. So it's twofold. It's the societal view, and it's also that Wolf does not view her as an athlete who needs to be fed, who needs to burn calories to condition her body properly.
Right. And so you have Benji and the other swimmers are secretly feeding her so that she has the fuel to compete.
Wolf is also continuing to tell her, do the breaststroke. That's what I did. And her first success is ignoring him. I mean, she knows she can't trust him, but that's also part of her determination to do this, is that she knows better what her body can handle, and she's going to dismiss what he says.
So Benji's failed attempt is what pushes her to make her attempt, which I thought was interesting. As to how accurate that is, that I cannot speak to. Most people would cower at the idea of jumping right in after somebody that they've been training with nearly died, but I think it does speak to the character. I think it's a big character building moment, and you didn't necessarily need to build her character any further at this point, but it didn't hurt to do it.
I believe the 2 attempts is accurate, because otherwise, why would they have spent so much time doing that for the purpose of the film? Especially because this was all shot on location in the Black Sea, and they did have Daisy Ridley in the water. Like all of the channel swims were actually her swimming in the Black Sea.
You talked before about the attempt at keeping her malnourished with the grapes, sort of sabotaging her conditioning. Let's talk about a far more egregious attempt to sabotage her once we do get into the water for the first attempt, right? You get some interactions with her and Wolf where Wolf still needs to put the show on in front of the press, and he does so in a few different ways. The first is when he tries to give her the apple.
Right, because no one is allowed to touch anyone in the water.
Correct. And he's trying to pass it off to her. And you can tell that he's getting just close enough where it looks like he's going to give it to her. Not close enough where she's actually going to get it. And when he drops the apple towards her, it is so obvious that he short drops it into the water and she can't get to it. But to the press that's watching, it looks like, oh, she fumbled the ball.
Exactly. What I love about these sabotage attempts, well, that sounds horrible, but what I love about the way the story unfolds and the way that it's filmed is that you're really not sure if he's being underhanded or not. The first time that we were watching this, I really thought it was just his ego and him being a misogynist. But the second time we watched it, I realized how deliberate all of these attempts were. even with this one, I really wasn't sure at first because, to your point, like a rogue wave could have knocked Trudy into his hand and then all of this is just over. I mean,
Right.
I understand why they don't want anyone touching the swimmer because you could grab her by the arm and like pull her along. Like anything could affect her course, really. You know, and the whole point is that she's got to do this on her own. Other than having the ship there as a guide for her path, they can't have any interference. So the Apple moment was so subtle. It's not until it's spelled out later on that, no, he knows all of the rules. He's comfortable on boats. He's comfortable in the water. He didn't slip. There's no way he could slip. That then I put the two and two together. Because even with the next sabotage attempt with the tea, I really wasn't sure until, you know, Burgess later puts all the pieces together for her.
Yeah, where he puts the seasickness pills, he dissolves them in the tea, which he gives her to drink, and she immediately becomes disoriented and has to be pulled from the water. And when he has the second attempt with the tea, he's able to get like a fishing net, and he puts the bottle in the net and kind of passes it over to her. So he's passing her the nutrients without having touched her. So he could have done it with the apple the entire time as well. So like but you're right. It's not until the second time around, once you know what it is that he's done, that you start looking for those visual cues. It's very well done.
Right, because before you know how it affects her and that she gets all woozy, like you see him with the motion sickness pills and you think it's because he was just hanging off the side of the boat. And now, because she's so determined, you think perhaps that she's won him over and he's really trying to help her by getting her nutrients. And it's this brilliant idea. Let's get her the tea. Let's put it in a bottle. We know it'll float if I drop it. So you actually aren't sure if he's on her side until, you know, he's got to jump in the water and save her because he has, you know, completely sabotaged her at this point.
So out of the water she comes. She goes into the hospital. She wants to go home. She's not exactly sure at this point that he has sabotaged her. Her father shows up. Meg shows up. They're getting ready to take her home. And then they get the scene with Burgess.
This is such a sweet moment when the nurse tells her that home comes to you. Because the entire time with the saboteur, it's worth mentioning too, I love the edit because they keep cutting back and forth to the family listening at home. And finally, this is the turning point where it's not Wolf who's on her side, it's her father. He finally realized what this all means, and it still counts, you know, even though it's in the 11th hour, he still came out to support. And of course, Meg is with him. I just love it. So then Burgess goes to visit her in the hospital. And I love that we had the scene before where he's at Coney Island in the nude because you think he's a little nutso, right?
Right.
But the entire time he's been following her very closely. And he's the one who starts putting the pieces together of you were going at 2 knots, you were keeping up pace, you looked great, you had the endurance to continue this, what gives? And then she tells him about the tea, and he realizes that Wolf was never going to do her any favors.
So her father's reluctant to put her back in the water. Burgess really convinces her to go back in the water because the father's never at 100% on board with this, even through the end of the movie. What I couldn't quite understand is why Sullivan is so mad that she's going to give it a second attempt, because ultimately she can look like the hero he wanted her to look like when he sent her to the Olympics. If they can prove to him that Wolf, who he hired, was the saboteur and that she can actually do this, I just don't understand why he is so angry. And why he, like, almost when he sends the press off and he tells them that she's escaped her return home, I can't tell if he does it because he now wants them to document her failure, or if he's hoping against hope that she can do it and they needed the proof that she actually did it.
Right. I feel like this is one of very few points where the path is not always clear, because that was something that even watching closely for it the second time, I didn't get much more clarity on. You're absolutely right, though, because her dad's first reaction is, well, we'll go to the press, we'll expose the whole thing. And they're like, no, 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 no. And I think that's a little bit of Burgess saying, you can still do this if you want to. Let's beat them at their own game. No press, no one. We're just going to do it. And then we'll tell everybody once you're on the other side. But you're right. It's still not clear why Sullivan would try and stop her. Why they have to go through this whole dog and pony show of putting her on the boat home. And then she's got to escape. I mean, I understand why she would have to show up and make it look like she's going home, because she couldn't get back on the water. She still needed a little R&R after what she had been through and a little bit of training. But now the time is running out because the water's going to be freezing soon. That was another thing that I never understood, was the timeline of why you didn't do this when everything is a little bit warmer and you waited until it's going to be, 50 degrees at night. But anyway, I digress. There's no reason that Sullivan should have tried to stop the second attempt. That just doesn't make any sense unless he's just going to be super spiteful about it.
So off they go on the second attempt. The press is there. Her father's there. Meg is there. Meg's got the record player playing the song over and over and over again. It's at this point, frankly, that even the song has worn on me. I like the symbolism, but even I, at this point, I'm like, all right, enough of this.
And you would also think, like, you get a little bit more motivation from a variety of songs. But I love that Meg is still coming through for her with everything, not just the music. She fixes her bathing suit so that, because it's big, it's rubbing on her skin. Yeah. It's, giving her a little bit of a rash. So she fixes that. She fixes her goggles when they're leaking. Just every step along the way. She even jumps in as a motivation of like, let's just race. Like when we were kids, Trudy hates to lose a race. So I love that she's still showing up. And I also love the promise and the deal that she has with Burgess of don't pull me out, because nobody was going to understand other than him what this is like for her and how important it is. Especially, I think it's more about Trudy understands that he knows what she can handle and he won't pull her out for that. It's make sure my father doesn't mess this up for me.
Yeah. That's
kind of the wink and a nod that they have with each other. And I just love that relationship between the two of them.
Burgess, when he fires his gun at the press, I immediately went, oh, that's Capone. That's where I recognized him immediately as being from Boardwalk Empire. But it's like not, it's unintentionally hilarious. Like it shouldn't be that lighthearted, but it is.
Because, you totally caught it. And as soon as you said it, I was like, of course. Because this actor gets so much glee from firing guns. Like, that's the look on his face. It's hysterical. But we're going to talk about the cast later, but I just love this character. Like, he's kind of got a screw loose, but you need somebody like that in your corner that's going to do things like this.
And if the press isn't enough of a distractor and a threat, the jellyfish, this whole, I was in pain watching her swim through this sea of jellyfish. I cannot imagine. Jellyfish stings hurt badly enough. You're in salt water? I cannot imagine.
Literally pouring salt on every single wound as they are cutting you open. And what was really impressive about this, I think some of them are digital in the really wide shots, but those were practical that they put in the water. So she, you really see her like cutting through them. I'm not saying that they're real jellyfish, but I'm saying they are an actual prop
Yeah.
that she could swim through. And this whole time, I love how it's cutting back and forth to her mom at home, who has burst into the radio station because she's not getting updates fast enough. So she wants them in real time. It's cutting back and forth to Epi. It's cutting back and forth to her naysayers. So just, again, with this pacing, really, really well done.
It is. And then you get to the point where it's starting to get dark. They're losing their daylight. They're starting to approach the shallows where, tons and tons of ships have been lost in the shallows here. So they have no choice but to ditch the boats. Like, I know she wanted to go without them because she needed to prove it. And obviously she did. But there's also an element here where the boats really can't be with her because, as we know, this area is a threat to any vessel. So I thought that it was well done, that it's symbolic, but it's also quite literal. Those boats can't go any further.
Right. And this is why so many people can't make it, because it's dark. And in theory, if you're swimming in a straight line, you should be good. But like, people don't realize how incredibly difficult that is because you're getting completely disoriented. And the current is going to throw you every which way. And when it's that dark, there's no lighthouse. There is nothing. It's not like the swim to Jersey where there was some sort of guide.
Yeah, there's
that
no
she could
wayfinder.
follow. Yeah, exactly. And your face is down. You can't even use the stars. So what are you going to do? But I love this scene where they light all of the bonfires to guide her
great.
in. It's wonderful. So obviously she achieves her goal. She is welcomed back to New York with a huge reception with the ticker tape parade. I love that, she let Epi ride in the float with her. She says, my coach rides with me, because Lord knows Epi did more across the pond than Wolf was ever going to do for her. I love that the Yankees are there cheering her on. I thought that was such a nice touch. That was really cool. It just ends on such a high note.
It absolutely does. Do we want to wrap up anything else on the plot, or are we ready to move on to the cast here?
No, let's talk about this incredible cast.
Cast is great. Daisy Ridley plays Gertrude, Trudy. She's incredible. I really liked her in the latest Star Wars installments. And you know that she can act, right? But this seems so out of the element for her if you've only ever seen her in Star Wars. I thought she was excellent here.
I agree. I love this for her. I love that she had a hand in getting it to the big screen and that she championed the story so much. I love that she got to show her range and her versatility. And I really love that she was able to play this character without like a holier than thou attitude or a really defiant attitude. Basically, like everything that we don't like about Moana, she did the opposite. If Moana was like this, I think we would love the movie so much more. But no, I really loved her performance here. The only thing that I was a little bit surprised about was that she was training quite a lot. And when you see, over the end credits, you see the real Trudy, and she is ripped. I'm surprised that Daisy didn't put on more muscle mass just from the intensive training that she did, or just from doing the swim in the Black Sea.
Right. Stephen Graham plays Bill Burgess. Loved him in Boardwalk Empire. Haven't seen a ton of him since then. He was a very pleasant surprise in this movie.
Yes. I mean, he's a pleasant surprise anytime he shows up, but I did start looking into his IMDb because you and I had said when we watched Boardwalk Empire, this guy is so crazy talented. He's going to blow up after this. He actually has. I feel like he's in a lot of British productions, and the only time that he makes an appearance in American cinema is when they need a gangster character, because he's got a ton of credits under his belt, but we just don't see him that often here, which is a shame because he's just so talented. I love this character. This was perfect casting.
Tilda Cobham Hervey plays Meg. I love the relationship between the two of them, not just the characters, but her chemistry with Daisy Ridley, I think, was just off the charts. I love her at the end, how she comes back. Just the two of them together, I thought, were excellent.
You hit it right on the head. The chemistry is fantastic. I love them together, but also to her credit, I love Meg on her own because she has so much agency as her own character, and they didn't kill her storyline in service of Trudy's. She's just a completely well-rounded character in and of herself.
Kim Bodnia and Jeanette Hayne play Henry and Gertrude, Trudy's parents. I thought that they were excellent too. Their chemistry was equally as good because you couldn't have two more different characters. I think both of them had really strong character arcs. They were a very good push and pull against each other.
I would agree. And at the same time, I totally bought them as a couple because, you know, we had mentioned this before that in a time period where it wasn't so common to show a lot of emotion, you still believed them as a family and you still believed that there was a love and a care amongst all of them.
Yeah. Cian Clifford plays Charlotte, Epi, right? She might be, other than Trudy and Burgess, she might be my favorite character in this film.
Same. I love her. Very little screen time, but does so much with it.
Absolutely. And then you've got Glenn Fleshler as James Sullivan and Christopher Eccleston as Jabez Wolfe. It's just odd that I mean, Wolfe, you know, is an antagonist, but not knowing whether Sullivan is or not. Like, I'm not sure if it's brilliant writing or if it's weak writing.
I feel like our answer does come from the fact that everyone was so fearful he would stop the second attempt. I think that does allow us to read into him being the big bad and Wolfe carrying it out.
Final thoughts on Young Woman and the Sea. I'll go first. I rank this one high amongst Disney sports films. It's near perfect. There are some issues that I think I've pointed out. Being confused as to whether Sullivan is a antagonist or a conflicted protagonist. Some questionable things in the timeline, not exactly knowing where we are in certain moments. It's sort of ticky-tacky stuff, but ticky-tacky is what prevents you from being perfect. So it's close. I really enjoyed this film. I think that it has a lot of rewatchability, more so than you think. Like, we watched it through the first time, and I thought, okay, that was really good, but am I really going to go back and watch Daisy Ridley swim in the water for another hour and 48 minutes again? The answer is yes, because I think every time you can watch it, you can pull something else that you didn't notice the first time. I think the sets are great. The CGI is horrific, but, you know, Disney. I think the costumes are really, really good. It's near perfect. I rank this very high.
You basically said everything that I was going to. I could not agree with you more. I absolutely loved this movie. And for as much as I enjoyed it, I agree with you. It's just shy of perfect because there are just those one or two minor things that could have used a little bit more clarity. So you can't give it perfect marks for that when there's still things left to question. I think that there are better sports movies, but this still ranks very, very high. I remember after we watched it the first time and I knew that I had to go back and do my notes, I could not wait to watch it again. And I completely agree with you on the rewatchability. You know, it probably sounds very funny because it's like, how long are you going to watch her swim for? But you could, because the pacing is so well. And I think a lot of it too is that this is just a really solid period piece. To your point, the CGI not so great, but otherwise the costumes, the sets, you know, especially like the hotel and the boats, all of it. I think, you know, even if you're not into the sports of it all, it really works well as a period piece. And I think that you would enjoy it for that too. This movie, to Disney's credit, they did not put it right on the streamer. They had a very limited theatrical release in conjunction with the start of the 2024 Paris Olympics. But it wasn't, I don't even think it went to like the big chains. It went to like the smaller art housey, like Alamo Draft House. And I think like back home, it went to Cinema Art Center. It wasn't really a wide theatrical release, which is a shame because I think that's part of why this film got so buried. They did market it. I remember seeing quite a few advertisements in places other than, you know, like Disney social media. It was definitely out there. But, you know, whether you've heard about it or not, I would recommend giving it a watch because I think there's just so much to enjoy about it.
We are interested in knowing what you have to say about Young Woman and the Sea. You can join the conversation on social media on all major platforms at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first a quick break. Now that we live in Florida and spend a lot more time in Disney World, you know we love to share our park experiences with you, especially in our dockside chats. However, telling you about our personal experience during a park day while sipping on a margarita is not the same thing as getting travel advice, which is why we are so happy to be partnered with our good friend Kelly at KMV Travel. You know Kelly from our reviews of Thor Ragnarok and Rogue One, and she has recently launched her own boutique travel company providing complimentary assistance with vacation planning. If you're thinking about booking a trip to Disney, you can visit kmvtravel.com and request Jackie as your travel advisor. We promise she will help with more than where to find the best margaritas.
Hey everyone, this is Brian down here in South Florida. I'm about 2 hours south of Disney, and when it comes to planning vacations, Jackie's the way to go. When it came to booking my family vacation for my 2-year-old daughter and my wife, you know, like everybody, I immediately went to the internet, started scouting prices. Just out of curiosity, I reached out to Jackie. She mentioned she was booking vacations for many people. So I gave her my list, my itinerary. She looked it over, and when she came back to me, she gave me her recommendations in regards to the parks. However, she also had new pricing associated with it. I've learned that going on my own doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be getting the best pricing. On top of that, it was stress-free. So all my vacations in the future are going to be through her because I don't have to think about it. She plans it. I give her some information in regards to what I want to do and create the itinerary for me. She's a market expert. She advised on which rides to attack first, which restaurants I should schedule on what day, and how to properly allocate my time to maximize my vacation. It was an amazing process. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Deadpool and Wolverine has joined the $1 billion club. I mean, I'm not surprised. The film was great. It's got a lot of buzz. It's got a ton of rewatchability. NSYNC is thrilled.
I'm thrilled for NSYNC.
They're already starting to develop a sequel, which is no surprise. I mean, it's just amazing the journey that this character has taken. It was the character that no one wanted to do at Fox. Disney, you know, it is such an un-Disney character. Ryan Reynolds championed this, and to see what it has become is just absolutely outstanding.
Well, I think that's part of the brilliance of it too, and I think that that's why Disney and Kevin Feige appreciate it so much, because they knew what a huge risk it was, and they've seen the response. The $1 billion, it's not a surprise. I'm just happy for everyone involved that did champion it, that now, you know, they really can feel vindicated by its performance. It's also not a surprise that it made $1 billion because of the outrage from parents who just took their kids to see the new Deadpool movie and had no idea what they were getting into because they didn't do 1 ounce of research. But I digress. It's probably what helped put this movie over the finish line as far as the box office gross. But I think it's also evidenced by the way that Disney has really embraced it as far as immediately getting Deadpool out in the parks at Avengers Campus. I think that that was a brilliant move. And then they had him at D23 with Josh DeMarco, and he did this big fake pitch on the Chimichangas roller coaster, which was so hilarious. He took so many digs at Disney, and this is where I think Disney embraces Deadpool the most, is because they're never afraid to make fun of themselves and to channel all of that through this character. It's gonna be brilliant. So if they are doing a sequel, I would definitely welcome it. And I hope, I'm excited for what that means for Ryan Reynolds. And I'm also excited for Channing Tatum because he's been the biggest cheerleader for this as well. So if he gets to do Gambit again, I think that would be great. And the fans are really championing for that as well.
Epcot International Food and Wine Festival starts on August 29th. It runs through November 23rd.
And we finally got some menus. Could we play it any closer?
Hey, you know what? Good. How about good? I'm happy that the festival is running for a shorter window.
Oh, yeah.
I
We've
think
been very
more
vocal about that.
I'm glad that they held the announcement. I'm glad that they built some anticipation. And frankly, we're not going to go booth by booth because it's going to take way too long. But the standouts for me, and I'm sure whatever is a standout for you, because we haven't discussed that yet, it's very exciting.
It is. And I think that this is just another instance that proves that Disney is really listening. I mean, we obviously saw that come out in spades at the D23 Expo. And, I didn't feel that the fans were being pandered to. There was a lot of Disney giving us what we want, what we've been pounding the table for, and a lot of new surprises. And I think that this is another instance because last year, a lot of people had said it's much of the same. I personally didn't feel like there were a lot of new innovative dishes. And I feel like this menu definitely bounces back as far as new creations.
Let's talk about some of the creations. I want to start with Communicore Hall, the festival favorites booth. And we went and had arepas, and they were great, but
they're amazing.
But we said, I don't remember this ever being at a festival that we could recall. Well, they've literally come out with festival favorites for food and wine. The kielbasa and potato pierogies with caramelized onions and sour cream are going to be there. The barbecue pork rinds with the pimento cheese are going to be there. And the key lime tart. There are a handful of countries that are going to stay the same. Like Canada. It's going to be I already looked. It's the filet mignon. Yeah. It's the cheddar cheese soup with bacon. It is what it is.
But you don't need to reinvent the wheel there. That's fine.
Correct. Just like you're going to have the cheese bread in Brazil, right? But there are so many opportunities with, say, a barbecue booth where you can get creative, you can take things out, you can cycle things in and out. I think that this is a good spot for something like those barbecue pork rinds, which were not as good last year as the year prior. I will say that.
No, it's definitely a smart move to have it because then I think this is why we're seeing so much variety in World Showcase because they're giving us the things that we want and things that people would be disappointed if they couldn't get. And they're able to just put them in another place. And then you free up the menu at each individual country to try a new dish. It's very smart.
Yeah, they've also got mackatizers.
I was very excited for this one.
Oh, the mac and cheese. That truffle mac and cheese is just calling my name.
I was thinking the same. Yeah, that's definitely on my must try. They always did have a mac and cheese booth. It was just under a different name.
Yeah, they've also made adjustments at the fry basket. Because I had to go look. I was like, please tell me that the vinegar and sea salt are not coming back. They were horrific the last 2 years. They're gone. They have been replaced with truffle Parmesan fries. I mean, that's a home run.
Yeah. And I would still get the yuca again, 10 out of 10. I was very excited to see that those are back.
Yeah. The Odyssey, the Brew Wing Lab is back, so that very polarizing pickle milkshake is back.
We might have to try it this year.
You can. I'm not. I'm not doing it.
We didn't last year. Maybe I'll get daring.
let me see. There was something here that stood out to me. I'm pulling it up. In France, the beef bourguignon is back. They're doing a lot with pastry this year, stuffed pastries. I'm not even going to try to pronounce these because I'm going to butcher them.
Oh, I know what you're talking. I got this. Because I was looking at this one. The Maillot Oignon Carmelus et au fromage de chèvre, which was goat cheese.
I have no idea what you just said, by the way.
I took 7 years of French. Still got it.
Oh, parlez-vous. Then there was one more that Forest and Field. This is between World Showcase and the Imagination Pavilion. I want to say if it's between World Showcase and Imagination, that must be the area that was the
wine
tropics.
And cheese across from the tropics. Yeah, there's
right.
the Caribbean on your if you're facing America, the Caribbean would have been on your left, and then this was like a wine and cheese. Sometimes it's a playground, but yeah, that's exactly where it is.
This is very much an autumn flavors booth, which I'm very excited about.
Same.
Pumpkin mascarpone ravioli, which with sage, brown butter, pecorino cheese, and hazelnut praline. This is going to be such a good October-November dish.
Mm-hmm.
For all of you PSL people out there, this is what you should be eating.
I will actually hold on this one. As excited as I am to try it, I will hold for probably our second go-around at Food and Wine.
Was there anything else that stood out to you that seemed super interesting? Or I think you and I are usually pretty much on the same page when it comes to most things. So I feel like I kind of hit on all of the beats that you would have been interested in.
Definitely. I am a little bit more adventurous than you are.
Yes.
So there's a couple more things, like a couple more seafoody things that I do want to try. One booth that we usually never go to, or at any festival really, I never get a funnel cake, because to me, it's just, as much as I love a Zeppeli, it's fried dough, it's empty calories. There's not a lot that you see that's so innovative about it where I would burn a dessert on that. This time, it's like a tiramisu funnel cake. I'm so in for that. And Italy has revamped their menu again. So it's the $1 million question. Is it worth it? Is it good?
Italy is very hit or miss. There are times that we've eaten from that booth at festivals and we go, this is awful. Tastes like Chef Boyardee. Never again. And then they put something else on the menu that we get excited about, and we go back and we try it and we go, oh my God, they figured it out. This was great, to the point where we will make a second trip back to a festival just to have that item again, and it'll be just as good. And then the next year they roll something else out and we go, okay, it's going to be as good, and it's not. There's a very fun roller coaster, I guess, that Italy rides, but we're going to have to give it another try this year and see where we go. And the line dictates that a lot, too. The line in Italy is always insane.
Well,
so if you catch it and it's a short wait, then I'll do it.
The other thing is the cost. That's what's been the point of contention for so many people, too, is that you're charging $10, $12 for a pasta, which I'll pay because they give you a good portion, but it's not always good.
Yeah.
And that's, why Italy is usually so polarizing.
But we are interested in hearing what you have to say about all of this news. And we are interested in knowing how excited you are about the Food and Wine Festival, because I love Festival of the Arts. International Festival of the Holidays is great, but it's the Food and Wine Festival. It is that kind of like old school feel, right? You share a meal, you share a drink, you all come around the dinner table and you share a conversation. And I think that's what makes this festival so much fun. And like, people really get invested in this festival. I feel like there's passports at all the festivals, but this is the one where people are really stamping that passport.
I also think there's a big nostalgia factor for you and I, because we would always come down in November for our anniversary, and this was always like our vacation festival. So I think that on some subconscious level, it's why we look forward to it more than most.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can help support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.